Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand on Film and to this week's weekly box office update for the UK and Ireland film box office. So this is the 19th of August update. There's a lot of stuff that's gone on, a lot of stuff that I got wrong. The first sort of did not chart prediction, which I'll get to. But films opening outside the top 10 this week. So Bluey at the cinema went down to number 15. Long Legs dropped to 14, 6 weeks in the chart, 7.8 million total gross. Ozzy and the Forest went in at number 13. Harold and the Purple Crayon went in at 12, or went down to 12, I should say. 3 weeks in the chart, having grossed just under £2 million. And the Spider Man 3 reissue went in at number 11 with 156 grand grossed at the weekend. So at number 10, down 5 places from number 5 is Borderlands. Now, I think last week I sort of said I can imagine that it's going to make its way out fairly swiftly. I predicted that it would drop all the way out of the chart. Obviously, it's not done that, but it is pretty like it's hanging on with its last legs, I suppose. 181 grand grossed at the weekend, 2 weeks in the chart. This is going to be it for Borderlands. It's not going to be it next week. So that's number 10, that's Borderlands. Number 9, there were 3 Tamil language and Hindi language films that were released last week. Stray 2 was the one that charted. Kel Main didn't, and Mr. Bakchan didn't either. So this is £291,804 over the weekend. So Stray 2 at number 9. At number 8, down a couple of places from 6 is Twisters. 5 weeks in the chart, doing extremely well. 315 grand gross at the weekend, bringing its total gross to date of 12.9 million. Now, earlier in the year, I would have been saying that this would have been worrying the box office top 10 for the whole year. Right now, we're sat number 10 place being, I believe, Godzilla X Kong or Planet of the Apes, one of the two. They're around about the 14 million mark, so it's not quite there yet. It might do, it depends on how well it manages to hold up, but there are a lot of sort of adult orientated films coming out over the next few weeks, including this week as well. There's a lot of 15 certificates knocking around. There's a couple of 18 certificates knocking around as well. Whether that means that the audience for Twisters is just dwindling each and every week. 5 weeks is a pretty good stint, though. So that's Twisters at number 8. At number 7, still holding on, 500 million, Christ, 500 grand grossed at the weekend. This is Inside Out 2, bringing its total gross to 55.5 million so far. 10 weeks in the charts, a massive 10 weeks in the charts. But as I talked to you today on August the 20th, Tuesday, August the 20th, Inside Out 2 is now available to buy on digital download services like iTunes and like Sky Store. So I don't know whether this means that it's going to crash out completely next week. If I'm honest, I've put it at number 10 in my predictions for next week, but I feel like we're seeing the last week or the last 2 weeks of Inside Out 2, but it's done phenomenally well. Number 6, down 2 places from number 4, is M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. So this got just over 550,000 at the weekend, bringing its total gross to 2.5 million so far. 2 weeks in the charts. It's a decent film, but again, it's now competing with those other films that are released that are 15 certificates that are taking the adult audiences away. So we'll see how well that it does next week. Number 5, down a couple of places from number 3, is Despicable Me 4. Now, this dropped more than I thought it would do. It got grossed 1.1 million, or just under 1.2 million over the weekend, for a total gross so far of 38.7 million. Still holding that third place on the top 10 of the year. 6 weeks in the chart. It's still not past a billion worldwide though, which I think is a little bit strange. I sort of, as I wrote the figures down on the slides and all that kind of stuff for this week, I did think to myself, like, where is it? Surely by now it's grossed a billion, and it's not. Even though Deadpool and Wolverine's done that and done that quite successfully and quite quickly, it might be that in terms of how people refer to it on things like Box Office Mojo as a domestic chart, so the US chart, it's not done overly well. It's done really well here. It's done really well in the UK and Ireland, but it's just not sort of translating overseas. Number 4, a new entry. Did not expect this to go as high as it did. Coraline, 1.2 million at the box office over the weekend. So this is the remastered 15th anniversary edition of Coraline. Now, whether this is just a lot of people who love Coraline and the fan base going out and seeing it, which is more than I thought it would be, or whether or not there's some sort of confusion around whether this was a new film or anything like that. But it's done well, 1.2 million. You'll find with the next couple that they are actually quite close in terms of how much they're grossing. So getting over a million is great for Coraline. Great opening. I expect it still to be in the charts next week. Mainly because I had a quick look at next week's show times and there's still quite a few screens for it. So I'd imagine it's still going to be there. Number 3 down from number 2 from last week is Deadpool and Wolverine, 4th week in the chart. So this is £2,393,213 at the weekend, bringing its total gross to date of just over 48.4. Still holding that second place. I don't know whether or not it will pip Inside Out. Inside Out, like we said before, is on 55.5. Can it do another 7 million? Possibly. It's not, it's not sort of unknown or unachievable by any stretch of the imagination. But it's a film that, again, has been very, very successful in getting those audiences in. And down one place from number 1 last week. So last week's number 1 down to 2 this week is It Ends With Us. So this grossed just over 2.8 million at the weekend. So again, its grosses are still very close to where Deadpool and Wolverine are getting their figures in. The gross to date so far 11.3. Now 11.3 million in 2 weeks is nothing to sniff at whatsoever. And like I was saying about Twisters before, Twisters is sort of just looking at 13 now after 6 weeks in the chart. It Ends With Us 11.3 after 2 weeks in the chart. It wouldn't surprise me if It Ends With Us is bringing up the end of the top 10 box office by the time we get to the end of the year. I did catch up with this. I know that I was saying last week that I'm not sure if I was going to go and see it because it's not really my type of film. I'll be totally honest, the first hour I thought, well, this is just a sort of middle of the line, by numbers, sort of romantic type thing. The last hour, I found myself sort of getting really engrossed with it. The sort of twists and turns that happen with some of the characters, some motivations that happen, and the sort of two stories that are running alongside each other, and they sort of come to a head towards the end. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would do. So fair play to It Ends With Us. And the screening that I was in was relatively busy for quite an early morning screening on a Friday. So yeah, It Ends With Us at number 2. And as predicted, in at number 1, Alien Romulus. Now, still not seeing this. I'm watching it on Tuesday. I'm watching it on Thursday this week, after results day. Speaking of which, good luck with everyone. The GCSE results. A-level ones looked well last week, but GCSE results, big day Thursday. So I'm going to go and watch this on Thursday after we've got all that sorted. So 3.7 million, decent opening weekend for Alien Romulus, decent opening weekend again for a 15 rated horror film. Like I keep saying it with things like Longlegs, with Trap, with now Alien Romulus. We're getting some more this week, and everything's doing pretty well at the box office. And it seems that these certificates don't really matter, whether it's a 15 or an 18. People are still going to go out and see these films regardless. So that's Alien Romulus at number 1. Looking at my predictions versus the actuals from last week. So Alien versus Romulus, It Ends With Us, Wolverine, and Despicable Me. Actually, no, the top 3 I got right. Despicable Me 4, I said would stay at 4, but it didn't. It went down to 5. I said Ryan's World, the movie, would go in at number 5. It didn't even chart. The swine didn't even get on the chart. That's never happened before. I've never said that something's going to be in the top 10. It's never even got anywhere close. 6 for Trap, which I said. Maine was the one that I thought would land in there, but Stray 2 did instead. So again, Maine didn't chart. 2 in a week. Inside Out 2, I said would go to 7. So I said would go to 8, and it landed at 7. Coraline was the one that I definitely got wrong. I said Coraline would be about number 9, and it landed at number 4. So it shows what I know. And then Spider-Man 3, I thought Spider-Man 3 might hit the top 10 because we saw that the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man had done, and we saw that Spider-Man 2 had done as well. But for whatever reason, there just wasn't the sort of people going to see this one, or it might be that there was just too much competition, and it did well, but it didn't do well enough to land in the top 10. So this week, it's good. The re-releases are going to carry on, the reissues are going to carry on, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So there's no change in terms of the 2024 top 10 so far. Every film is still in there. Inside Out 2 being at 55.5. Deadpool and Wolverine being at 48.4, Dune Part 2 39.4. Despicable Me 4 at number 4 is about 700 grand away from Pippin Dune Part 3 to that third spot. It's the films at the bottom of the list, so you sort of Godzilla X Kong, Ghostbusters, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I think I need to start watching out in terms of films that are going to pip them to the post. But yeah, there's no change whatsoever. So this week's new releases. First of all, now 17 Tour again follow. Now I don't know which way is the right way to say this. I believe they're a band called 17. I believe the tour is called Follow. It is going to cinemas. Now, I said a couple of weeks ago when the Blackpink one was released, I can't imagine it in the 10. And I was wrong. So, it would be no surprise to anyone that I'm saying that this one is probably going to land in there next week. Especially when they say it's limited screenings. They say it's limited screenings, but when I had a look at the show times, there's 3 screenings a day of it. So that to me isn't very limited. Anyway. Amazing Spider-Man. The Andrew Garfield Spider-Man film is getting reissued this week. And next week, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is getting reissued. And then we move into the Tom Holland ones. I don't know how well these ones are going to do. I don't know how well the case in point of going back to these is going to be. Maybe it's the No Way Home factor. And because of the sort of pop-up in No Way Home, people are going to go and see this one. Who knows? We'll see next week. Another reissue that I'm wondering whether or not it's going to land anywhere is the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction. It's been remastered in 4K and it's getting released in cinemas this week as well, or reissued in cinemas this week as well. It's got a couple of screenings. I saw 3 at the View in Manchester for Saturday. So again, I've tried it at where possible when it comes to my predictions for next week to make a bit of an educated guess based on how many screens I can see it in a cinema that I would choose to go to. And this one had about 3 a day. So maybe. A couple of smaller releases that are coming out this week. So Kneecap. Now Kneecap was the Odeon Screen Unseen, and I think the Cineworld Unlimited screening earlier in the month. So there might be a little bit of word of mouth around that. I've seen a lot of word of mouth in terms of them doing Q&As and things like that. From what I understand, it is a fictionalized version of the story behind the band Kneecap, but is starring the band Kneecap. Yeah. Another smaller one, Cuckoo, but this is getting released by Neon, the people who brought you things like Longlegs. This was the Cineworld secret screening recently as well, I believe. I think there's a little bit of a groundswell of people wanting to go and see this. I don't know how well it's going to do. Again, in terms of looking at show times and things like that, there's a lot that it's competing with. It only had 2 screens at the View when I had a look for Saturday. So again, I don't know how big this one's going to open this week. One that I am going to go and check out is The Crow. Now, The Crow, Alex Proyas, Brandon Lee, The Crow, 93 or 94, can't remember which one, is one of my favourite films. Love it. Absolutely love it. And when the trailer came out for this one, naturally, everyone's sort of like, well, it's not going to be as good, it's not going to be this, it's not going to be that, it's not going to be... Now, I will admit that I am one of these people that when it comes to remakes, and specifically when it comes to remakes of pre-existing material, I try and put a head on it of you're looking at an adaptation of a source that's just been done again rather than someone remaking a film. So, for example, I look at David Fincher's The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo as David Fincher's version of that novel rather than his version of the film that was issued before. Okay, so it's not remaking a film, it's just a different version it's a different adaptation of another piece of source material. Whether this is another version of the graphic novel or whether this is a remake of the film, I'll see on Friday when I go and see it. I get the feeling from the trailer, just because it felt a little bit different, this is just someone trying to adapt the graphic novel again. But we'll see. If I'm totally honest, the thing that concerns me the most, and I had the same feeling with Borderlands, is that I've not seen any reactions yet. I've not seen any reviews yet. And the later and later that these things get out, in most cases, the worse the film ends up being. And part of me doesn't want this to be a bomb. Part of me doesn't want this to do badly. Part of me doesn't want it to be rubbish, because I think it's easy for everyone to look at it and just go, "Oh, this film's going to be naff and it's going to bomb." But I don't know. I don't know. I'll see. I'll see on Friday. And the other big release of this week, which I am also going to see on Friday, I think I've purposely scheduled it, so I'm going to go and see The Crow first, and then go and watch Blink twice. So yeah, is Blink twice. It's Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut, starring Channing Tatum in a role that seems to be very against type. I am looking forward to it. I've seen the trailer a couple of times. It's weird that this one seems to have snuck up on me in terms of it being released, but then in the past few weeks, I've seen the trailer a good couple of times at the cinema. So they're sort of revving it up a little bit in terms of its promotion. The same with The Crow. Like, The Crow is all over buses at the minute that I'm seeing. Even though it's got an 18 certificate, which is unusual to see it plastered that heavily. So yeah, this is Blink Twice. So the two big films this week are Blink Twice and The Crow, and we'll see where they end up next week. But in terms of next week and my predictions for next week, so I think Trap's going to drop to 10. I think Inside Out 2 will still hang on for another week and will drop to 9, even though it is available, like I said, on digital downloads this week. I think the 17 Follow Again tour, however which way you say it, is going to land in at number 8. Similar to the Blackpink concert film that happened. I think Coraline's going to drop to 6. Deadpool Wolverine at 5. It ends with us at 4. The Crow's going to go in at 3. Behind Alien Romulus, which is going to drop down to 2. And then I think Blink Twice is going to go in at 1. Purely because I think Channing Tatum is enough of a name to pull people into this film, especially people knowing that it's a Zoe Kravitz directorial debut as well. And it looks to be a sort of horror thriller chiller type film, which I think tends to get audiences and a little bit more than those who would probably want to go and seek out The Crow. I think The Crow is very much going to be probably people of morbid curiosity like myself, but I think as well there are also going to be a lot of people who just choose not to watch The Crow because of their affinity for the other one. So we'll see. So I think Blink Twice is going to be next week's number 1. I think it's going to pip Alien to the post. It's going to drop Alien down to number 2. And then The Crow will then land at 3. So on and so forth, as you can see on the screen. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Oh, I should say, actually, that does mean that I think Cuckoo, Kneecap, the Pulp Fiction reissue, the Spider-Man reissue are all going to fall outside of the top 10. And I think Twisters is going to fall out of the top 10 as well. Yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. You will have seen on the channel last week that I did a top 5 video game adaptations, quote unquote, inspired by Borderlands. And as is going to be the way every week moving forward, I'm going to do these top 10s and then I'm going to do a top 5 related to something that's going on in the box office. So this week, the one that's going to go out on Thursday of this week, is my top 5 films to reissue. So this isn't a sort of a list where I've had to pull from the things that I think are the best performances or the things that I think are the best films. These are just the films that, if I had my way, are 5 films that I would love to see being screened in a cinema again for whatever reason. And that's based on how well the Spider-Man reissues have done and how everything else has done. So we'll see what that looks like next week. So like I say, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you next time.